Rami, sweeping statements, no
Kart-
contextualization, no
Kartikeya.
interconnectedness. It had to be played out. The bite had to be played out to be the bite had to be played out to show as to what the gentleman was saying. He has classified the entire ethnic issue on religious lines. And I had been saying that this is a very biased way in the way Western press has been trying to portray the conflict in Manipur.
Absolutely, Kartikeya. It's infuriating to see that they think that basis what they consider observations, they can make such sweeping statements on an entire nation of people. This is not just about Manipur, this is about the entire country. Without any sort of research, without any fieldwork, without any visits, this is the conclusion that they come to without even having the decency to let us know what the basis of this conclusion was. I have to once again disagree with Dr. Hauke with all due respect, because I think you can say that, oh yes, there's a religious angle, but is that the reason that the ethnic violence started? Is that the reason that Manipur went into conflict? No, that is not the reason. Of course, after repeated efforts by international communities to color this conflict in the easiest, most simplistic, in the most delinquent way possible, which is, with the color of religion, where it need not be applying this. Obviously, there are fringe elements who will try to push this narrative. And like I've said before, this narrative is not just aimed at Manipur. Mind you, this narrative is aimed at India, other Indians, and a democratically elected government. And that is the basis of this. They really need to look inwards. They need to look at their own hate crimes. They need to manage their own business, which is completely out of control. And they need to figure out how divided their own societies are. Like I quoted earlier on Kartikeya, the Ipsimore survey, 73% British respondents have said that their society is more divided on communal lines today than it was 10 years ago. So I think they need to put their own homes in order before insulting and pointing fingers at us. Of course, Manipur, we have realized, you have been talking about it for so many months, that it is a problem. It is an ongoing problem. Nobody wants to see Manipur in this situation, and it is a complex problem. Solutions are going to come, but solutions are going to take time. That does not mean that international agencies have the right to, completely fabricate stories like this.
Okay. Before I go to Professor Muni, let me read out two small paras. One is not on Manipur, but I'll read it out, and the second is on Manipur so the people would understand. Welcome, Asina. How are you?
I'm good, Kartikeya.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah.
The disenfranchisement of millions, and again mainly Muslims because of their religion, through the revocation of 2019 of the special status or autonomy of Jammu and Kashmir, now under the direct control of the central Indian government, discarding locally elected bodies and rights of the political participation and representation, effectively stripping Muslims and minority residents of many of their previous political rights. I think the history of amalgamation, becoming part of Union of India is completely missing. And the last part is the violence in Manipur is a warning of the dangers in action. The danger is that they left alone, many more Manipur may erupt. Look at the generalization. India ranks as the 8th country at the highest risk of mass killing. This is because of targeting of the religious and other minorities. Now, it's such a problematic issue. Professor Muni, don't you think that West weaponizes human rights? They weaponize human rights.
It is always doing that. Look, I mean, the West has no credibility to stand on human rights. They have no credibility on the question of discriminating against people and being ruthless about it. Absolutely true. They cannot have a justification. But, look at the world we are living in, as I said. Therefore, if there is some problem with us, people would exploit. They would exploit to the hilt, to their advantage, and we must snub them. How do we snub them? One way is to let not problems emerge, which is impossible. Every society has its own problems. So the second approach is that let us come out with credible transparency as it is happening. Now, I mean, I don't want to go to the Manipur issue, but this has
No,
shaken
sir,
many of us.
you can say that. I have done this, and I've been doing. I'm very proud to say that, sir. I've been doing this program for more than 120 days in my channel, and we allocate 1 hour to Northeast. Primarily, it has been Manipur. We have not been able to go to other states, but Northeast on our channel, News9, it gets 1 hour every day, and I think 90% of the time I have done it myself.
No, that's true. Therefore, no, we on the channel have done. I'm saying we as a society, we as a government. The credible data, it is the government has to snub it. The MEA issues a statement saying that you have no right to, this is a colonial mindset. All this is true. But in addition to that, what we need to do is to credibly put our own case ahead that the allegations leveled against us are absolutely baseless and false. That's all I'm saying. What I'm talking about is the gaps in our feeding. Now, you mentioned about Kashmir. Look, I have been teaching Kashmir for last 40 years, and I find that many times our case has gone by default because we have not put forth our case. We never started it from the day Pakistan violated the standstill agreement with the Maharaja of Kashmir, and they walked into Kashmir. Now, therefore, simply by keeping quiet and saying that what others are saying is wrong is one aspect of the situation. The other aspect is that we must come out with hard facts to show that how baseless the charges are against us, because these are the hard facts.
Okay, Hasina, are you there with me? We have not forgotten you.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Please
I'm
show
here.
Hasina
I'm
to me.
here.
Hasina, your opening comment. Sorry, you joined a little late. I was just reading out these reports of United Nations Special Rapporteur on minority issue, and they, presented the full report to the U.S. Commission for International Religious Freedom, and number of observations on Manipur. And the second point was that in the House of Commons, the Democratic Unionist Party MP Jim Shannon said that it is a concerted effort to target Christian and Jews. I mean to say this, this is not a sort of a rodeo sort of a show where I'll say my blood boils, but I'm surprised that again and again, every 6 months, these reports come out. They get circulated and they become part of official archive. You see, it's an archive of, people refer back to these reports. And these reports create a body of knowledge. This is a false body of knowledge. This report says 360 churches destroyed. Okay, yes. There were 200 temples also destroyed. Look at the larger picture. They said Maitis are Hindus. I also realized after a month of discussing with a lot of people, there are Maiti Pangas also, Maiti Muslims also, there are Maiti Christians also. It's a complex community. Hasina.
Yes, so I think, Kartikeya, what is very critical is that when reports are being sent to UN Special Rapporteur or they are being sent to the House of Commons, they are actually sent by a certain section of organization or task force that are working independently and not with the government or not with any other collective engagement. And that is the reason of these report. I do understand that these reports are important, but if these reports are going from a single window, which is actually
these reports set the template for discussion. These reports set the narrative. This is how people perceive them.
Yes.
That's because they are independent, they create a powerful narrative. If someone in the government or someone in the US government says, you will say you are biased because you are part of the administration. This report will create a narrative that it is the truth.
We need to understand that Indian government need to set this straight by calling all these groups of people to come together and review these report that has been sent. That is also what the nation should do, isn't it? That is also very critical, because these reports are being sent from different angle of the society, which is civil society organization, task force, religious institution. They will send their narrative. And most of the narrative are also based on emotions of the people, rather on the technicalities and legalities of incidences that needs to form this narrative. Very often these narratives are never looked from the lens of legalities, from the lens of protocols, or from the lens of factual informations, or a collective cohesive group of people coming together to give the directive of the reality. And that is where the challenge is often. And in this particular case, we have to understand that since the Indian government did not give a directive, and it has been a stagnant situation that has been over and over again coming out in parts and pieces of what incidences is happening. Isn't it time, Kartikeya, that
Asina,
there are many
academically,
groups going
I see
down?
this very differently. Academically, I see this very differently. I see a very long academic position on this issue that India is not a nation. It is an amalgamation of communities born out of accident because the colonial powers left and communities at war. I see that academic bias in it. If you ask me, I see this academic bias in this report. There is no sense of civilization in the right.
I represent the civil society organization. I've always looked, I mean, as an organization, Impulse has always looked as not one framework. We've always looked as a collective engagement. When I was in Manipur myself 20 days ago, I went to meet all the communities, listen to all the communities. And I also understood the voices of the civil societies, understood the general communities who are actually waiting for support, who are waiting to be understood, to be heard, the main issues. But then you also have, fraction of leadership evolving from these communities, giving their narrative. This is what the challenge of a democracy is as
Fair
well.
enough, Hasina. You have made your point. Let me play out another point. Rami, I know you're getting very agitated. You're looking agitated on screen. Okay, I'll come to you. I'm not going anywhere. Let me play out the bite. Another bite.
And all of these make a mockery of freedom of religion and non-discrimination guarantees for these religious and other minorities. Human rights defenders, lawyers, and journalists face harassment, surveillance, detention, and worse, sometimes, under the, as mentioned previously, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. You also know that non-governmental organizations have also been targeted and in some cases closed under the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act and also other legislation. Now let me repeat, India risks becoming, in my opinion, based on the information I've received and the allegations we've received, it risks becoming one of the world's main generators of instability, atrocities, and violence because of the massive scale and gravity of the violations and abuses targeting, not exclusively, but mainly religious and other minorities, such as Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and others. It's not just individual or local. It is systematic and a reflection of, well, I guess the best description is religious nationalism. There is a discriminatory citizenship determination process in Assam, which many of you will know about in detail, but potentially also other regions of the world. Assam is a model being looked at very closely in other parts of India, and this we should be very concerned with.
Bijesh, this is very, I'm coming to you, Rami. This is very funny. India is one country where people have objections if we want to know who are the citizens, and if they are not, if they are illegal immigrants, where have they come from? People have that problem. So any regime related to identification and a sense of citizens runs into the Western problem. But America can set it pretty easy by building a wall, by when those migrants die in the river, then it is no issue. There's a hue and cry in Lampedusa in Italy, 8,000 people in that small island. Italian police have seen to have been, firing at those boats. That is pretty okay. But if India wants to know who our citizens are, it becomes a problem. It becomes a discriminatory regime. Well, Gazab hai.
I remember, I was sitting for a London-based radio show, and the concern of the anchor was that why is India engaging with Russia, and shouldn't they should be engaging with Ukraine. They said, what's the problem with having an independent foreign policy? So they said no, it doesn't. Then later on he fumbled and he actually said that it suits our foreign policy. So basically the white supremacy is something which is always there in the play. I mean, if there's a genuine criticism, I honestly speaking, as I said, I completely agreed with Mr. Muni that the situation should be brought back to normalcy. There cannot be two thought about it. But the fact of the matter is that when you try to sit on a high stand and try to start preaching to people as to how particular things should be done in a particular way, when your own record is super wrong, then I mean, other than making
Brijesh,
mockery,
let
you
me
don't
read out
present a very
2-3
credible
lines again,
picture.
and then I go to Rami. This is like denial history. It's when I'm reading it, I feel like I'm living in a multiverse. There is one universe here, then there is another universe in which that it's like Washington DC comic book. There is a discriminatory citizenship determination process in Assam, potentially other regions of the country, which could lead to millions denied citizenship, mainly for the Muslim minority community. What happened in why was the IMDT Act born? I'm not going to get into who the Prime Minister was, which government was in power. That's a very shallow way, unacademic way of looking at things. There was a movement by indigenous people against the migration which was taking place from Bangladesh. I'm not even using the so-called religious words. So I mean to say there has been polls which have been determined, the outcomes have been determined by polls where the indigenous Assamese population feel that a lot of people have come out. And it says it's a discriminatory citizenship determination process.